What's your definition, your own personal definition of failure?
It will have to do with how do you define success.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Because
So how would you define success?
if I define success not necessarily in money, but in satisfaction. And satisfaction could, again, be very much related to the goal.
Welcome to the Derelict podcast. For the disparaged, depleted, and delinquent souls trying to find our way, we're talking about the scary part of the journey, where we don't know how it'll end. Let's be free to face our fucking failures in real time as the most unadulterated, truest version of who we are. No sugarcoating. Welcome to the shit show, you derelict.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Josh Abbandonato, host of the Derelict podcast, and we have a very, very special guest with us today, Talia Carner. So nice of you to join us, Talia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me as a guest on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You look like you're ready to go. I love it. So I want to tell everybody a little bit about Talia before we get started here. And at the heart of Talia Carner lies an activist, a feminist, and a humanitarian who gives a voice to those without one, aka a derelict, right? A proud seventh generation Sabra, the New York-based author, is a woman unafraid to tackle controversial issues. Her psychological suspense novels bring to the forefront indignities and atrocities long ignored. They include books like Puppet Child, China Doll, Jerusalem Maiden, Hotel Moscow, The Third Daughter, and now The Boy with the Star Tattoo, which I see you have right behind you. Perfect.
Right.
Formerly the publisher of Savvy Woman magazine and a consultant to Fortune 500 companies, Talia Carner is a committed supporter of global human rights. She's a board member of HBI, the Jewish Women Research Center at Brandeis University. In November of 2023, Allgemeiner magazine named Talia Carner as one of the top 100 people positively influencing Jewish life in 2023. Her addictions include, but maybe aren't limited to, chocolate and social justice. I love that. Talia is married to Ron Carner, former president of Maccabi USA, and they live in New York and Florida and have 4 grown children. Welcome. Where are you right now? Are you in New York or Florida?
Yeah,
right
I'm
now,
in
Talia?
Long Island, New York.
Long Island. Okay, fantastic. And where do you live in Florida when you're down there? Do you have a place down there?
Raton.
Boca Raton. Okay, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
So when do you just decide to do that with the rain and the snow and kind of one of the rain birds?
It's basically December through the end of April.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in Florida, and then come back 7 months. We have
Right.
not done the 6 months deal yet, but 5 months in Florida. Originally, it was going to be 3 months.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and
Oh, yeah.
there's no reason to go back.
Yeah, right.
And now it's 5 months.
And now here you are. I could definitely see myself. My kids are still pretty little, so I can't do it now. But when they're out of the house, I think I might do the same thing. I love that. Get some sun when you can. So, Talia, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited about our conversation. So Talia and I met online through basically a meetup type group. And we started having a conversation. And one of the things that really stood out to me about our conversation on the phone, Talia, when we talked about doing the podcast together, is that both of us, in different ways, have had to redefine what we would use the term success, right? We need to redefine success. And both of us seem to do it in our middle-aged years, right? And so I just thought, I was like, wow, for the derelicts out there, we're talking about failure. We're talking about this stuff real time. What better conversation than to have how to redefine success in your middle-aged years? Because I know, at least for myself and a lot of people that I talk to, those years seem to be the years where you do something for a long period of time, you get pretty competent at it, get pretty good at it, probably start making pretty good money at it. And then all of a sudden, one day, it seems like all of us wake up and we're like, I don't know, is this what I want to do? the rest of my life? Is this really why I'm on this planet? What happened to you? Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Actually, in a way, I was very lucky. I had my interests and abilities were probably quite equal in the sense that I could have gone one way or another. But I chose chose marketing, advertising, magazine publishing, which was one career, even though it sounds like three different careers. It
Right.
was one career, and I did well with it. I loved every day. I didn't always love my clients, but let's say I really enjoyed everything I did. And then time came and some changes happened in my case was the market. My last company was called Marketing to Women, to Business Women Marketing Corporation, and we marketed to the top of the pyramid of the women's market. And as long as advertisers targeted that market, I had budget. They had budget to give me to work with. Once the market moved, and all of a sudden the next market was the Hispanic market, another time was the babies market, another one was the senior market. So now the women's market was not strong, and for me to spend money on my advertisers to convince them to work on the women's market was just too expensive. So the market moved from under me. I did not fail. I had tremendous amount of satisfaction from what I had done, but I also understood that nothing is forever.
Yeah.
Then, maybe unrelated, I was a volunteer for the Small Business Administration women's programs teaching entrepreneurial skills to women. When I was asked by the U.S. Information Agency at the time to go to Russia to teach Russian women entrepreneurial skills after the fall of communism.
Oh, wow.
So I did that twice in 1993. The second time, in October, I got caught in the uprising of the Russian parliament against Boris Yeltsin. And I was on a run from the militia, and it was a harrowing experience. I came back. And,
Wait. You can't just skip over that. That's too good of a story. Can you just give us at least a little bit of what happened there?
There was a battle between Yeltsin, then President Yeltsin, and his parliament called the Duma, in what they called the White House, which was the building of the parliament situated in the middle of Moscow. And it was a real civil war where he brought tanks and bombs and bombed the buildings, and so on. So
wow. And you were there when that happened.
So I was there. I was in the middle of teaching women entrepreneurial skills.
Wow.
I landed 2 hours after the uprising began, meaning it happened when I was in the air, and I come and get into Moscow. I wasn't alone. I was in a group.
But you were literally right in the middle of it.
Yeah. So
wow.
Actually, I saw a scene which at first I thought it was a Sunday, so I thought they were filming some Hollywood film,
wow.
some film, because you could see white shields, police with white shields, and the shields are flying up in the air and into the water, and I thought, what is it? Is it like a medieval scene film? The white shields were weird, and I saw people with pitchforks. So, where do you see pitchforks in the middle of? You don't.
Right.
I
would think it was a movie too.
Manhattan. So I thought it was a film. Well, that was a true battle between the people the supporters of the parliamentarians, supporters who came from everywhere. They came with pitchforks as well.
Wow.
And the police, and they were winning actually over the police. So they managed to throw the cops into the water. So that was going on for the next 3-4 days, and the story is too long. You'll have to read my
No,
novel.
which book is that in? Plug your
It's
book right now
called
because I want to
Hotel
read it.
Moscow.
Hotel
Hotel
Moscow. Okay,
Moscow.
and you tell the story in there.
I tell that part of the story.
Oh,
Right.
that's fantastic. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Well, so I have a question for you then. So one of the things that we often do on this podcast, or I would say it's a newer edition, is that we have these 5 questions that we like to ask every single guest because everyone seems to have a little bit of a different answer here. And one of the things that you said earlier that really caught my ear was you said, well, basically this is what happened in the marketing advertising space. And it wasn't necessarily a matter of you failing. It was just the space failing around you, right? Which is sometimes what happens when we go through a failure. So
changes.
The market changes. Absolutely. Sometimes it's completely out of our control. So I'm curious, in one sentence, how would you define failure? What's your definition, your own personal definition of failure?
It will have to do with how do you define success.
Oh, got it.
Because
Okay. So how would you define success?
if I define success not necessarily in money, but in satisfaction. And satisfaction could, again, be very much related to the goal. In my case, when my company at the time, the one I mentioned, Business Women Marketing Corporation, the goal was to generate income for professional women's associations for their educational programs. And I did that.
So
When the market moved away, it was just not possible for me to continue.
right.
But I had an office at the Empire State Building in Manhattan. I had staff. I had, there are basic expenses, and if the market is not there, it's a problem. So,
Yeah,
but
I think that's great too. You're bringing up a really good point because we live in such a world where everything is so exposed, right? We have social media, we have news, we have all of these stories that kind of show success and failure in a certain way. And, if they made a movie about that, it might be called a failure, but it doesn't sound like it was for you, and I guess I'm curious, you said success is being fulfilled. So then would your definition of failure basically being unfulfilled?
or no, not succeeding in that project.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Not succeeding in that project is, you can fail, but I wouldn't say I've never been a failure in anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So you can fail in a project. Actually, I'm listening now to the book, Elon Musk's book. I mean, what this guy has done is unbelievable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so many projects that he completely bet on things that no normal human being would do.
Absolutely
But
not.
then
And at
also
the same time, like
his
he's
vision. So maybe he fails in something, or almost
right.
the Tesla situation can go up and down and up and down. His buying of I'm now in later parts where he bought Twitter. Oh my God, this is like he didn't even know what he was doing, and,
No.
and he did
Right.
know what he was doing, and
Yeah.
so he was taking so many risks on small and big. Now, also in terms of personnel, if you have this, in order to be a genius, it's probably an idiot savant, what we call it. Something is very high up there, but other things are very low down. So so there have been failures overall. He succeeded because his vision since his youth was to get to outer space and to build a car that doesn't use fuel, and
Right. It's
And
amazing.
there's a lot of other things that he's invented. It's just unbelievable. Back to our subject, it doesn't make one a failure if they pick up a project and the project could be well done or not. I tell you, from the time I used to teach business entrepreneurial skills, there was one major cause of failure that I warned all my students, all my
Ooh, what's that? I can't wait to hear this.
not doing enough research. Because the failure very often comes, they would say, oh, I didn't know that. Well, why didn't you know? You didn't investigate. The information was there. Let's say you wanted to get into an industry. Why don't you work for somebody else for a year, learn it from inside? Either you would have known that, you could have avoided the failure of your
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
Or you don't look into your competitors deep enough, how they accomplish what they accomplish. If they lower the price, why? What's in their manufacturing? What's all the way back through the process that makes it possible for them to cut their prices?
Yeah.
So you need to do, it's called research,
Yeah. Right.
basically. And so many people don't do it right or don't do it at all. They just fly in the seat
Absolutely.
of their pants. So the first thing in business to avoid failure, if it's starting a business or buying a already running business, is do your research. Know the industry. Don't jump into an industry you know nothing about. A friend of mine just this year wanted to buy into she was into a trucking company. I mean, what do you know about trucking? What do you know about the aging of trucks? And what do you know about the regulations of trucks and running the personnel? And I mean, I don't even know how to ask the questions.
Yeah,
But
yeah, no. So I get that, and I definitely agree with you. But how do you resonate that with like Elon Musk, who consistently jumps into things that he doesn't know anything about?
well, obviously he had the money. He had the money from one thing
No,
to
not
another.
always. Yeah,
He
but not
did.
always, right?
He had investors. He invested. Yeah, he sometimes risks his own everything. He could have. He was very close to being the biggest failure
Yeah,
ever, and he would not have come back because
right.
nobody would have given him money again. No bank and no investors. But there were enough people that also believed in him and participated in his vision. But as an employer, for example, he was a horror show. He wanted the kind of intensity of sleeping in the factory or in the office day in day out. That kind of dedication is what he wanted, and he got from some, but didn't get
Yeah,
it from others.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So anyway, going forward, I came back from Russia after I was on a run from the militia, and luckily the uprising was quelled after 4 days. And after 3 days, I returned but for the next day, I actually made my way to the American embassy, and they whisked me out of the country on the first flight.
Wow.
So I wrote a report to the USIA, U.S. Information Agency, that has sent me, and at that time, it was pre-internet or pre-emails. This is 1993. There was internet, but it wasn't that progressive. So I printed, people were calling me what happened, and I printed this 23-page report. And on November 3rd, 1993, I sat down to lunch with a friend who was a journalist. And I said, don't ask what happened. Here's a report.
Right.
All it needs is hot
Right.
sex, and I have a novel. So she says, why don't you write
Wait,
it?
what? Wait. Say that one more time. What did you just say?
I said, here's the report. All it needs is hot sex, and I have a novel. So
That's a
she
great
said,
quote. I love it.
why don't you write it? I said, okay. I went to the office, and at 2:48 p.m. began my writing career.
Oh, fantastic. Did you start with the hot
And
sex scene or some other scene?
not well, that's that scene, but I knew the ending, which had to be that event. I just needed to make sense,
Yeah.
and story to bring to that point.
Okay, wait. Which
But
book is this? I want to make sure that our
it's
audience is tracking.
now it's Hotel Moscow. At that time,
Okay.
it didn't get published,
Okay,
and
so everyone read Hotel Moscow
that
specifically for the
20
hot sex scene. 'Cause that's what I'm looking forward to.
actually.
Did you
I
cut it?
think I eventually cut it out
No,
because
don't tell anybody that.
because I I wrote a draft at that time. I began my writing career. That book did not come, was not published. I continued to write. And then 20 years later, that original book was on something called DOS. Remember there was a
Yeah,
DOS?
I remember DOS.
So I couldn't even resurrect it. So, but I didn't need it. I was a better writer.
Did
So
you lost all of it and started over?
yeah, but it was
Wow.
okay because I would be writing 20 years later. I just used the material, the
Wow.
research. I had folders with the research. I knew what was the weather every day of that particular week. And
So
I
so
understood.
I have a question for you then, Talia. This is really really good. I appreciate you saying this because it's bringing us back to kind of one of the things that I wanted to chat with you about, where it seemed like I don't know about your experience, but my experience is a lot of the times it's hard to talk about quote failures, right? And the way our society, I love the way that you define success and failure as far as, are you satisfied? Are you content? Are you doing something that's really making you passionate? I love that because I think a lot of people could look at your story and say, well, she didn't make it in marketing and advertising, failure. She wrote a book and it didn't
Oh, I
publish right
made it.
away,
I made it big.
failure.
Excuse me.
No. Let me finish. Let me finish because I don't agree with that at all, and that's why I'm saying it because of the fact that you are not a failure and you figured out ways to transition. And I'm just curious. Part of what we want to talk about today is just redefining success. Like from the outside, if you don't sell your book and it doesn't go on New York Times bestseller and you have millions of copies and everything else, you're a failure, right? There's plenty of failures out there that have done that. Or maybe the job didn't work out for one reason or another. And, we could appear the victim if we're just blaming everybody else, which is not what you're doing. What you found is you found a more passionate way to live. And you found out, wow, I'm this writer and it's been inside me this whole time. And now I have more experience and ideas and everything else. And now it's all coming out. So I'm just curious, that's a really big career change, right?
It
Changing.
was a
It's
complete
huge.
career change.
Yeah.
And I must
So
say
how
that
would you define, let's use the word success instead of failure for a second. How would you say you define success through that change? Like what made it, even when you were not getting the book published, it wasn't selling, etc., but you still found something in yourself that says, no, this is giving me fulfillment. Like how did you find that through that, what a lot of people would call as failure? Does that question make sense?
yes, it makes sense because specifically in the book writing business, it is very, very hard to break in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was very, you can say that I could have been very close to failing in it. But I guess, and my husband was very nervous about it because when I told him that only like 0.5% of any books that ever been written ever get published, so like,
Wow.
what
One
are you
half of
doing?
1%?
Something
Really?
like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
It's
insane.
really, actually, of all books that do get published by mainstream media, only 3 to 5% are fiction. So here I'm
Wow.
writing fiction, so
Right.
forget about everybody else. The fact is, the fiction market is very limited, but that's not how I looked at it. I said, I have a story to tell. So the first thing is to tell the story. Then I had to learn how to tell it well. So I started after I had this big draft, we call it first draft. As first draft, once I had it, I started going to courses and seminars and working with writers groups and learning the craft. So I continued to develop. Now, that book did not actually was agented, but did not sell. So you can say it was. I just don't look at it as a failure, but because it's so common that authors do not get published at all, or
So
the first, or then I write the second. So I wrote my second, and then the third, and so on. And eventually, it took me 9 years from that November 3rd, 1993 at 4:28 p.m. to the time my first book came out.
wow.
So you can say, I mean, I could have stopped anywhere along the line and said, let me take a job that
Right.
will pay me well. I had offers to go into commercial real estate, which is I have the ability to see three-dimensional spaces very well. So I would have been good at that, but I could have made money, but I did have the luxury of saying, no, I want to write another book, another story. And I didn't, yes, I wanted it to be published, but I eventually, my very first book was self-published, but it was self-published only after Simon & Schuster, the editor, loved it. It was agented. She loved it, met with me, said, this is fabulous, and so on. It needs another twist towards the end.
Okay.
So we discussed it. I said, fine. I wrote the twist. And then it sat on her desk for 5 months, and then she left the job.
Wow.
So now I knew that I had a book that was publishable by Simon & Schuster. It was Simon & Schuster level. And because of my marketing background, this is called Puppet Child, because of my marketing background, I knew that I could do a good job. And that's when I self-published. And sure enough, as soon as it came out in October or November of 2002, it immediately was listed as the top 10 first novels
Wow.
to 2002 by a major website, and it got a lot of traction. So, and part of that, a lot of reviews and a lot of interviews, write-ups. I ended up actually launching a law, the Protective Parent Reform Act, that relates to this book. So that gave the book, it came, like the Protective Parent Reform Act, the author of Puppet Child. So the nonfiction hook part of the book made the book a success in its own little pond. It's not an ocean. It was not a New York Times bestseller list, but it changed the life of people because, first of all, they could see themselves in a situation described, and there was now a law on the books that passed in 4 states, and clauses were picked in 20 other states. So, yeah, so my satisfaction was enormous.
And why? What was the main
Not
reason?
for money. I mean, it's
No, I know, but
probably
why? Like, if you could nail it down, why was your
because
satisfaction so
it
enormous?
changed people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
It gave to be able to create a law that will, in this case, protect molested children and give
Wow.
a voice to their mothers, which is that particular story.
To your point, right? If you went to one of those, let's say, children or adults of somebody that was affected in a positive way from that law, and you asked them if it affected them, the answer is yes. So what better success is there? Is it better to be on the New York Times bestseller list, or is it better to affect a child that could have been molested? I mean, that's amazing, Talia. What I love
Yes,
about what you talk about as far as your story goes is just how you're redefining success, or how we would see success, right? Because most people see success with the wealth and the power and the fame and all that sort of stuff. And, one thing that one of my mentors says to me often, which I really appreciate, he's in the arts. So he does visual arts, plays, movies, etc. He does pretty much everything in the arts. And one of the things he says, when I'm doing a new project, if it positively impacts one person, then I know I did my job. And I love that, because it's so easy. It is for me too, with this podcast and business and everything else that I have. It's easy for me too to get stuck in, well, I don't have as many listeners as that person, or I don't have as many followers as that person, or I'm not doing as well as, right? We could live in this comparison game and constantly be in this failure rut. But if you would have done that, and you would have stopped, and you wouldn't have published those books, and you wouldn't have gotten those laws passed, people's lives would be worse.
Right.
That's success. That sounds like success to me. And
Exactly.
even though you were
That's
doing
how
it
I
in the midst of failure, right? Like you quote unquote failed, like we all fail, but through that you persevered, you found the success, and you made it happen. I love that. I think that's fantastic.
So that's how my career continued, with
Yeah.
one project after another. And I'm still not, my latest novel, which is The Boy with a Star Tattoo, which we can see
See?
there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's
We'll,
not a
we'll have
New York
links to this
Times
too, by the way, for anybody listening or watching.
on
We'll have links
on
to her
my
books in my
yeah
episode, the show notes. Sorry, go ahead.
on my website, which is myname.com.
I'll put it in the show notes too, Talia, so everybody can go in the show notes. They can click,
Okay.
get right there.
So
Yeah.
I'm still, my books are not a New York Times bestsellers list, but in my pond, where when my event coordinator calls and says, I'm booking Talia for the next book, and they said, oh my God, we want to be the first. We want to have, we love the books. We love having, and so that is for me success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I want to tell
Absolutely.
you also, actually,
Sure.
it's interesting for Puppet Child to another story relate to that, and that goes back many years ago by now. Two state senator candidates went on the platform of the Protective Parent Reform Act, my law.
Okay.
One in Delaware, one in Maryland, just happened to be near each other, but unrelated. So they ran independently against the Democratic and Republican candidates with this law, because each one of those candidates on either party did not want to deal with family issues. Now comes this independent horse out of the gate with each of those states and gets people excited and people following. So what did those two candidates do? They adopted the ideas of family laws related and took the wind out of the wings of those two smaller independent candidates. So those candidates failed. And what I said to them, you actually succeeded.
Absolutely.
Because you got both parties fighting for your issues where they refused to deal with them before. So they, from their point of view, when somebody runs for a political position and they don't get that, that's a failure. But because they were running on a particular issue, from my point of view, it was a success.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, especially we're, in the middle of election season here in the United States. And I've seen this several times in, well, not just presidential elections, but also presidential elections, when an independent or somebody else will get up higher that, or even a Republican or a Democrat, and they have no shot of winning. But whatever they talk about then all of a sudden becomes center stage. And now all of a sudden people are talking about it, and reform happens and laws change and everything else. And everybody looks at that independent person. They're like, what a failure. That guy did a terrible job, etc. Okay. But then they brought this main piece to main stage, and now things are changing for the better. So I would
Yes,
agree with you.
exactly.
It's amazing.
Exactly.
I would just say it's amazing to me the people that often society calls failures can have the biggest impact.
Yes.
I'm curious, as we talk about this, you know obviously redefined yourself, kind of who you are as a person, just based on your career and becoming a novelist and writing these amazing books, and then going through years and years of them not getting published and all of these challenges, and you're still in it, and good for you. And I absolutely love that. And I'm just curious, how would you say, how have you redefined success through that? In other words, well, let me ask you a different way. Maybe this is a better question. For anybody that's listening or watching right now that is going through, let's just focus on career for a second. Let's say that they're not satisfied in their career. So kind of that failure definition of being unsatisfied. What would you say to them right now? Somebody who's just not really satisfied with what they're doing and they want to be able to find success in it, not success in the world's definition, but success in fulfillment. What would you say to somebody kind of struggling with that right now?
Probably breaking the big picture into the smaller components. And it's probably is true with many things that we do in life in general. For example, in a personal relationship, maybe that relationship is not perfect, but we tend to break down into specific pieces and say, well, this part works for me, and this part works for me, and this part works for me, but the other two parts may not, and you balance it. Where do you want to be? And that's probably true for everything else. It reminds me of my friends that were in a young age were hippies, and they started producing children, and they had to settle into a home. They couldn't be traveling with a backpack and hitchhike across America anymore. And when they got the money together, they realized the only thing they can afford is like a small house in the suburbs, and in the suburbs of a suburb, really so far from anything they had ever dreamed about their life. All of a sudden they are in a suburban life, which they had detested. And I met them 20, 30 years later, still hoping one day to get to a world that no longer existed. Because the hippie time is over. People do not hitchhike with a backpack. And you have to have, they both were both artistic and educated. So they were working mainstream corporations thinking that this is really not who they were. But something else never came because. So did they, I think they were successful. They have a nice life. The marriage was very strong, still is. And they eventually left the corporate world to do freelancing in their own respective fields. And they're doing well. They have a lot more time off, but they still live in that little house that they detested from day one.
Well, why do you think that is? Why do you think I mean, is it fear? Is it change? What do you?
It's the economics. It's the economics of having the kind of house. Maybe you want to have a house on the top of a mountain, or by a shack by a pond that's your own, where you swim every morning. Well, you can do that in I don't know where, in some places, but then you don't have the corporate job that would give you that
for sure.
income,
for sure,
and the schools that they wanted for their children, and so on. So, life is, you break it to pieces, to the pieces that are important to you.
Talia, I love what you're saying too, because for me, you're bringing up another really good point, and that is expectations, right? Maybe they have these expectations of, well, I always wanted my life to be this way, and I still want it to be this way, but it's impossible now because the market shifted, the economy shifted, the government shifted, whatever shifted, right? Where I can't live my hippie lifestyle, so to speak, anymore because it's not culturally accepted.
There's no hippie life anymore.
Yeah, right. There is no hippie life, and what that makes me think of is it makes me think of kind of redefining success through challenges of like how other people see you, right? So in your experience, I've done this as well, where I've shifted careers and went from a marriage to a divorce, and all these different shifts in my life where somebody puts me in a box and they want to say, hey, here's who Josh is, right? Here's who Talia is. And I'm sure people did that for you when you were doing marketing, advertising, etc. You start writing, and there's some people that even if they didn't say it to you are probably thinking, well, Talia's in this box. There's no author in this box, right? But you did it anyway, which I love. And I guess I'm curious too. So you're Jewish, correct, Talia?
Yes.
So I'm just curious there's a lot of racism, obviously, everywhere in the world. There's a lot of that happening right now, especially, and I'm just curious, how does that impact you as a Jewish novelist, where you're not necessarily writing about Jewish stories or problems, etc., but you are Jewish and you are a novelist, and we're living in a really challenging environment right now where it seems like that. I don't know if that's helpful for you, hurtful for you, etc. Like, how, I guess as a Jewish woman, how do you feel like breaking the mold and getting into being an author, and how do you not get trapped in this, well, here's the box we have Talia for, right? She is a novelist, she's Jewish, etc. Yeah.
First of all, my latest novel, The Boy with the Star Tattoo, is definitely Jewish.
Okay.
Has a star tattoo at the bottom of his foot.
Okay.
And it's related to Israel, even though it has to do with, it's set in France, but related to Israel in 1969.
Okay.
So definitely this book would draw the ire of ignorant people, because
why so?
I mean, first of all, the anti-Semitism hurts. It hurts by, as I'm saying, the ignorance. First of all, to be the subject of hatred and blind hatred. I mean, just replace the word Jew with black. And imagine you are being hated because you are black. And if you're a black author, we are not going to read your book. We are going to trash your book. If you're a black author, we are going to demonstrate in front of the bookstore where you are appearing, because we do not like blacks. So anybody who is doing that is exactly like the KKK, complete, so steeped in hatred that they refuse to see beyond this flashing, fearsome hatred into simple facts of the Middle East, because it starts now since October 7th, the war on Israel that not began by Hamas on October 7th. They have been doing it for years and years and years. You tell me, what city do you live in?
I live outside of Portland, Pacific Northwest.
Okay, how many missiles are you going to accept from Canada on Portland? Talking Portland, Oregon?
Oregon, yeah, Oregon, sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
How many missiles you're going to be accepting from Canada on Portland, Oregon, before you would say this is a war? Now, 600 in 1 week? 600 in 1 week over 10 years? I mean, this is insanity for anyone to say Israel is the aggressor, while Israel has been holding back and holding back and holding back. And there is a much deeper situation in the whole Middle East. How did the Gaza Strip was established? Because of the Arab countries wanted to create that. There were 250,000 people living in the Gaza Strip in 1948 when Israel was established. There are now 2.2 million people. So much for genocide to begin with. But also, it's the richest refugees ever that walked on the face of the earth, and because of the UN supporting and all of the money that was supposed to be going into establishing civil and political institutions went into war. Preparation, tunnels, nothing. Not the schools, not the hospitals, what they call hospitals. There are some, definitely, but they're all headquarters for missiles launches. So when they launch missiles, any response will then destroy the hospital. And if Jews get killed, Israelis get killed, Hamas wins. And if Palestinians get killed, Hamas wins. And those useful idiots who are looking into the situation in a shallow way without understanding that this is only one proxy of Iran. There are 5 proxies of Iran, and Hamas is not even the most dangerous one. Hamas is only one. There are 4 others. I mean, we have the Houthim now in the Red Sea blocking all international commerce through the Suez Canal, so that now international ships have to go around Africa. We are going to see the prices.
Oh yeah, they're going to skyrocket. Absolutely,
and you're going
for sure.
to see prices and delay in delivery, because this is going back to 18th century, where before the Suez Canal was the end of 19th century. So let's say beginning of the 19th century, before the Suez Canal had been dug and traffic. I mean, but these people who demonstrate have no idea. They don't even know where the Suez Canal. They do not know where the sea, because of anti-Semitism. They are. You see, when the United States was attacked and it bombed, let's say, Afghanistan, a lot more people got killed. But actually, look at this. Russia has invaded Ukraine 3 years ago, February, plus 3.25 years ago. When was the last time you've seen hundreds of people and filling the streets in a demonstration against Russia?
All the time. All the time in my city. All the time. There's on the freeway down Russia. Into Portland, there are hundreds of people holding Ukraine flags with big signs all the time. It's really popular in my world.
Yeah, but that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
So I have a question for you, Talia, because one of the things that I really like about talking with you is that you refuse to accept failure as a label for yourself. And I love that about you. It shows you're a very confident person. I'm sure you've been told that before. Like you seem to emanate confidence. Like, I am a novelist. I am a woman. I am Jewish, and you're okay with that. And I've just found that, at least in my life, whenever it seems like people love to jump on a side of something, a lot of the times it's because of either fear or insecurity they have in themselves, right? Like, I need to go join with this person because I'm really not a very kind of secure person in and of itself. And then we pick sides for whatever reason. And media does not help with this, right? So in the United States of America, it's pretty clearly defined, like, whose side of every single war we seem to be on. In every other country, it's different, right? I don't know if there is a right answer with any of these, and I'm not even going to go into that. But we all have our opinions. We all have our thoughts on how that happens. But I guess I'm curious, for your perspective, how is it that, let me say this a different way. When somebody else went through your life story, they could say, oh man, I failed at marketing and advertising, and I failed at this and I failed at that. You're like, no, I'm not fulfilled, but I am fulfilled in writing, and I'm going to write. Whether anybody's going to read it or not doesn't matter, because this is the story that I have to tell. What did you say earlier? You said, I have a story to tell, so I must tell it, which I think is amazing, right? I love that about people when they stand for things as well, whether it's war or anything else. What do you think causes people not to do that? In other words, what causes people to just kind of shut down and then not say anything if they have a story to tell.
Well, these are jumping from one subject to another. At first, the way you presented the question about what's happening today with the anti-Semitism and anti-Israel, which have become one because Israel is very central to Jewish identity,
Absolutely. Yeah.
is the moral, it's the bankruptcy of the moral compass. And the moral compass of these people, and they are not uneducated. We are talking professors at universities. We are talking people who are journalists, who they are writers who now refuse to accept awards at Penn or event unless they would be allowed to say specific things about if PEN organization does not condemn genocide. Well, where does the genocide come from? It's a blood libel because the numbers are not even behind those numbers. It's the numbers that were given by Hamas that the UN has already cut in half. And those numbers are not even considering when we look at people who are from the military in the United States, for example, and say that the Israeli military's casualties of the enemies or the enemy population is incredibly low considering the conditions. It's an urban warfare. It's you work in these very difficult conditions. But so there is a moral compass failure of people who refuse to even look deeper, and those who are shouting free Palestine, not even understanding that words mean kill all the Jews of Israel. There's no other way to interpret it because the Palestinian flag covers all of Israel. So free Palestine is get rid of all the Jews, and we already saw how they do it. Okay, so that is the part about the moral compass. And maybe the same moral compass is what we or I use for myself internally as defining myself. I don't think I had once a problem with someone trying to define me. When I started to write, I had a friend who was a Yale University graduate of master's in English literature, and she said that because I was a newcomer to the country, I could not possibly be the one writing what I'm writing. I must be paying somebody to write for me. And she insisted on that for a very long time, and eventually we stopped talking. And now I'm 6 books later. I'm still waiting for one day to get an apology. Say, well, you are writing your own books. Or is she going to say, I still think you're paying somebody to write your books for you, even though none of them could have come from anybody else's brain.
Where do you think that's coming from, though? Do you think that's like
jealousy? Because she
I would
was
agree.
The English grad, and I studied economics, and I can.
Right. So how could you be the author? I'm the English major. You're not supposed to be the author. I'm supposed
It's
to
from
be the
Yale
author.
University,
Right.
and
Right.
I only have a master's in economics. From
How dare you? How dare you write a novel?
And this was even before I even wrote my first novel. I got first essay I'd ever written got published in the New York Times, and that was like, oh, you could not have written this, and so on. And but the point is that is when a person tried to define me, and I knew that I wrote it, and I knew that I wasn't stealing from somebody, but I must say that those kind of things don't disappear. There are sometimes every book I write, every new book gets published, and I've been published by HarperCollins, so it's my last 4 books are with the best publishing house.
Congratulations,
And
that's exciting.
I'm saying I know she's reading it. I know she's reading it, but I mean, it's not out of, it's not something I completely put out of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely anti-Semitism, which is itself a dark ignorance,
Mm-hmm.
but also even, look, even the presidents of the universities that gave in for the encampments, for me, they were a failure. Why?
Mm.
Because, first of all, they lost the moral compass for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't lost the moral compass of the university.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you explain when an uneducated person gives in to a mob hate, which is what they did in the
How do you explain it?
Nazi Germany?
How do you explain it?
I'm saying, no, that's a failure. That's a
Right.
failure. You want
Yeah.
to talk about a failure. That is a failure, and
Mm-hmm.
it's an internal failure that comes from a failure of a moral compass.
Wow. As we're kind of ending our time together, there's a few things that you said that really have stood out to me. One is have a story to tell. And one thing that I think is so beautiful about that is everyone has a story to tell, right? We all have unique experiences, perspectives, things that have happened to us. And I found in my life, a lot of people feel like, well, my story is not that interesting or it's not that exciting, so I don't really have a story. No, you do. Everyone has a story to tell. And sometimes it's just about telling the story. I mean, I started this podcast with 0 listeners, the same way everybody starts every podcast. And now we have several. And then hopefully it'll get more and more and more and more, just like your books and everything else, right? But I have a story to tell, and I'm going to stick to that story, just like you are. And I love that. And I love the fact that you're still making books from that. And then the other thing you said is, I think you said learn to write. And I think that could be used in a bigger context for whatever story that is. Learn to present it, whatever that means. Is it writing? Is it a video? Is it just storytelling? Right? Something. Learn how to do your specific piece. And then in order to find success, there has to be fulfillment. I love that as well. Because when I get distracted by, again, the media, social media, whatever, telling me that I'm not successful, what I constantly have to remind myself is what you just said. Well, what's internally? What's my moral compass, right? Where am I headed? Why am I telling the story that I'm telling? And then am I impacting anybody? And honestly, if my moral compass is good, it's good towards good moral things, I have a story to tell, and I'm impacting somebody and fulfilled in that. What better success is there than that, right? I mean, everybody else could call me a failure all day long, and I could go bankrupt and not have any money and never have any fame or anything else. But if I do those things, I can look inside myself, make sure that I'm following my moral compass, telling my story that I have, and then impacting somebody. Could you imagine, Talia, if everybody on the planet did that? What an amazing place to live, right? I would want to live in that world.
I'm not that idealistic to
Neither am I. I don't think it'll ever happen.
say
But wouldn't it be
that
amazing?
we can strip. I'm an economist by
Right,
trade,
right.
by education, so I must say that we are very lucky in the United States to be born into an economy where, as much as people complain about it, and oh my God, the complaints are non-ending, but
Absolutely.
it is in this country where most people on a salary can live, they can have even a little beaten up car. I know not a minimum wage is not fabulous and so on, but when I was young in Israel, I came from a well-to-do family, but once I was kind of trying to do it on my own, my salary only could support me for 1 week, not for 1 month. And I already worked, because I was smart, I got myself a job at an advertising agency at a very young age. I I had a salary of that other people, a good salary.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. The economy at that time did not yet allow it to last more than 1 week. So I
Mm-hmm.
came to the United States, and a much smaller salary managed to keep me for a month.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something we do not understand and appreciate enough. Of course, not everybody is well to do, but we are very lucky to start from a point of view where we have the basics in our society are being met. Kids do not have to walk to school 5 miles
Mm-hmm.
every day, each direction. There's a school bus even in the
Yeah.
most rural areas. There are things that are given. You mail a letter. Most of the time, it gets there in 24 to 48 hours. It doesn't take. I just sent books overseas.
Mm.
It's taken a month. A
Mm-hmm.
month for a book that I put in an envelope to
Right.
get to the destination, because in other places the mail does not work this way.
Right. Right. Well, how would you, just as we're kind of finishing up here, I completely agree with you. And, frankly, I had, well, I mean, I'll just put this out there. I had a lot of stuff. And when I was first starting this podcast, I had a lot of head trash and limiting mindsets, because one of the things that I didn't want to be was just another middle-aged white man doing a podcast. So I had to get past that, right? I had to get past, oh man, I'm just going to be in this box with everybody else doing this. And hopefully you can see from the podcast alone, it's not the same topic as everybody else has. But
Right.
at the same time, to your point, this is something that I have a hard time showing my kids sometimes, because, we're upper middle class and make good money and we can do basically whatever we want. And my kids can get spoiled with that. And, I constantly have to remind myself when I have a problem, that none of my problems are really problems. I mean, they're really not that, like, there's no bombs falling on my house. My kids aren't dying of some terrible disease. I'm not in a war. I'm not having to kill people just to survive. I mean, there's so many real problems in the world. My kids aren't starving to death, right? And we are so incredibly just blessed and amazed in this country and a lot of places around the world where we're just there's no reason why, as far as I can tell, like, why was I born here versus some other place where I was way poor and couldn't afford food and everything else, right? Like, I didn't do anything to do that. So what I love about this entire time talking to you is that every time I've tried to bring up some sort of failure, you've been quick to be like, yeah, but it's not. And here's the reason why. And I love that about you, because shifts will happen in our lives, right? Whether it's a career change, a relationship change, anything. And we have to figure out, how are we going to define that in ourselves? And then can we go internally and realize, like, well, this is something now that's going to make me fulfilled. And I love that.
I felt a few years ago when I was writing a novel called The Third Daughter. I had to learn to dance tango.
Mm.
And I've been dancing my entire life. I dance ballet. I'm not somebody who's stranger to use the body movement.
Mm-hmm.
A year of classes in tango, I failed. And I remember the day I was dancing with a partner and I quit and I said no. And I said, I've never in my life failed like this on something that I've put my mind to do. I put a year into learning with private instructors.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm saying, I'm not a person who's incapable of dancing. I've been dancing my entire life. I still dance jazz, but I couldn't dance with a partner. And I failed miserably in tango, which in my book, there's a lot in that the third daughter. There's a lot of tango, and you can't imagine that I failed in it. But I remember that I said to this partner, I said, I'm really sorry, I'm quitting. I've never failed in anything in my life as I have in tango. So here it is. It's not life-shattering. It doesn't define who I am, what I am. But I was so disappointed in me. Could I put another year or two and struggle through it? I don't even think I would have succeeded.
Yeah. Well, and that's a point too, right? With
But it doesn't define me.
right. I don't hear your failures define you. You fail just as much as all of us. We all fail, but it doesn't define you at all. You decide, hey, what am I going to do, and how am I going to pivot, and how am I going to shift from this? I think that's fantastic. Well, Talia, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a really good conversation. I really enjoyed this. Oh, thank you.
Great interviewer and a
Thank you.
very thought-provoking conversation. You got me to think about things that I haven't given much thought to, and you pointed out things for me about myself as I had not thought ahead of time and all of those topics. But thank you so much.
Fantastic. I appreciate that very much. And for everybody listening, again, thank you so much for joining us. Talia, it's been such a pleasure to have you here. In our show notes, check out below, or if you're listening, check out still below. And we will have a link to Talia's website, maybe a few of her books, and some resources there. And I very much look forward to checking those out as well. So we appreciate you being here, Talia. Again, to everybody, if you enjoyed the conversation today, as always, please like and subscribe and listen to more podcasts, and maybe send this to a friend. Maybe there's somebody that you know that's kind of struggling with this mental, either their moral compass internally, or they're just not sure where to go next in their life. So send this episode to them. Maybe it'll help them and bring them some joy and some hope. And I know it will. And Talia, again, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Okay. Have a wonderful day, and see you later, you derelicts.